Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we'll discuss interplanting crops. Let's get going. So interplanting crops is when you grow two or more crops in the same area. Now, one of these crops is put in whenever the plants are small with the idea that it'll come out before the second plant is mature enough to occupy that space. So what we want to do this year is we want to try to maximize as much food as we can possibly get from these raised beds that we put in last year. So part of that process is going to be learning what grows here and how much we can get out of that specific space. Having said that, let's go take a look, and I think it might make a bit more sense of what I'm talking about. So as you can see here, we have interplanted our radishes, which are these guys right through here, with our pollinators for this bed, which are these right through here. And then we have the taller plants, which are the zinnias. The idea is that currently the marigolds and the zinnias, they're not demanding a huge amount of space. Now, once we get into June, July, that time of the year, they are going to need a lot more room to reach their full potential and be able to put off the flowers that we need to attract the pollinators, and kind of deter the pests. But at this point, the area between them where the radishes occupy, which is, from here to there, that area would just be wasted. So what we've decided to do is try to take advantage of as many of these spaces as we can this year. So again, in this example, we have used the radishes. So in that example, it's important to note that the radishes are going to be coming out in 30 to 35 days. So by the time the summer rolls around and the marigolds and the zinnias need the room to grow and mature into the pollinators that we want them to be, those radishes are going to be harvested and long gone by that point. So you can see taking the time to plant anything like that is fast growing, and can grow in those smaller spaces like that, it's going to be to your advantage because it just gives you more food to eat instead of just sitting there with nothing in it. Again, in this case, we have the radishes. I also want to point out there's a bit of a difference between interplanting and companion planting. For example, with our tomatoes, we grow basil, but the basil and tomatoes, they're going to be together all year, and both of those plants are quite large. So when we plant our gardens, we have to plan for them to be mature. However, what we could do is we could go in and put some turnips or beets or radishes in the open areas with the small immature plants, as long as we make sure that we pull them before the midsummer when the basil and tomatoes need that specific room. That would be an example of interplanting and companion planting. So as an example of our thought process going into this year, let's take a look at the cucumber bed. We started the design of this by putting in the back trellis system, so we had an idea of how much room would be left afterwards. We also knew that we wanted to grow marigolds, dill, and basil in front of the cucumbers, so we moved that up here. Now, between the dill and the marigolds and basil, there was a bit of room until the plants mature. So between those, we stuck in some spring onions, and those will only take roughly 30 days or so to come out. So before the beginning of June, all of these spring onions will be removed. And between the pollinators and herbs in the front row and the back row of cucumbers, you can see there's also quite a bit of space that at this point in the year is not being taken advantage of. So we went through and put in 36 lettuce plants. You can see here they're real small. Anybody who watches the channel knows that these lettuce plants, they'll go from this size to big enough heads to cut in about 35 to 40 days. So you're looking at, by the first week of June, we should be able to remove all of these lettuce plants and have enjoyed them in tossed salads and that sort of thing. Also, by that first week in June, first or second week of June, the cucumbers will have started to grow exponentially in the heat and humidity, and things like these marigolds and dill plants, they will also grow much faster than they are now. Again, this is another example of how we're using our pollinators and our interplanting to maximize our garden spaces. So to wrap this video up, I did want to say we're predominantly using 5 vegetables right now to sort of fill in the blanks in our garden. We're using 2 different lettuces, black-seeded Simpson and butter crunch. We're using spring onions. We're also using turnips and beets. Now, all of these we start in the greenhouse so that we have like a little plug to put in. It just helps us with the spacing, and it prevents us having to work around the established plants to go through and do the thinning, that sort of thing. But you know, there are other vegetables that you can use. If you have any ideas, let us know in the comments down below. As always, we appreciate you folks hanging out with us today. Till next time, I hope you all take care of yourselves. Peace.